Hi, everybody. It's Ann Patchett at Parnassus Books, and I'm here with my pal George Saunders. And as you know, there's been an ice storm and nobody has any power. And so George came to town and he signed all of these books, but we didn't get to do our onstage conversation tonight. So we're just going to talk a little bit and hopefully you'll get to see this video. And most importantly, even if you're missing getting to see George in person, I say this as an author and as George's friend, it doesn't actually matter because the very best thing that George can give you is in this book, and he's given it to you. So this is a little nice bonus, but don't sit around feeling bad that you've missed the event because this is what matters.
Then you get to avoid the personal stuff, which is it's an advantage to me. Just skip the person and go right to the book.
Exactly. Exactly. So I was reading through these questions that people who thought they were coming to the event sent in, and one thing I didn't know is that Lincoln in the Bardo is going to be a Met Opera.
That's true. It's
look this way.
It's in October of this year of 2026. It's composed by Missy Mazzoli and the librettist is Royce Vavrek, and I believe this is the first time in the Met's history that there's been a premiere by an opera by a woman, and I had a chance to hear two different versions of this, and it's just amazing. So I'm not in it, but
But that is just incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, to have your work made into a Met Opera, it's thrilling. Are you an opera person?
Yeah, we are. I wasn't when I was young, but when our kids were little, we'd drive up to New York, and so I got a real love for the form. And actually, in writing the book, I always had I don't know if this is how you were, but I had almost like a theater in my mind, kind of I could sort of see where each part was, and had some thought of it being, theatrical in some way. But yeah, do you have a visual element of when you're imagining something, or you're?
I have a visual element, but not an idea of how it might be transformed into another work of art.
Right.
But
right.
Bel Canto was an opera in Chicago, and it was really one of the greatest thrills of my life. So
I had an experience when we went to see a trial or a rehearsal in Cincinnati, and it was very strange because I kind of recognized it as mine, but in some ways they got some essential thing that I didn't feel I'd gotten into the book, but there it was in the sound of the music, and it's looking forward to it.
And it must be a huge cast, is it?
It's a huge cast, and they're doing all kinds. We don't know exactly what, but the idea is to do all kinds of magic and kind of get the supernatural element. There are kazoos in it, and so
Kazoos. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to writing in general. How do you know when you have a good idea for a story?
Did you ever know Douglas Unger? He was
No.
my teacher at Syracuse. He's at Vegas now, and he said to us one time, if a writer could distinguish the story she thinks she should write versus one she actually should write, she could save herself about 20 years. So you have that idea, I should write this.
Absolutely.
And you theoretically know it's a concept, and then it doesn't cohere. So I've kind of taken to skipping that step. And if I have even the slightest idea I should do this, I just try it. And it either stands up in that first couple paragraphs or it doesn't, which for me means I'm kind of excited. There's a fullness of voice behind the head that you can get to, and also a little stymied, like, oh, this is going to cause big problems. And at this point, I'm like, that's good, because the problem is the obstruction that the reader will feel too. So if you feel the problem, that's really good. And the bigger the problem, the better, because then if you do happen to, I always think it's like Houdini. If Houdini said, I'm going to get out of this windbreaker. It's like, no big deal, So it's a combination of it. Does it feel fun? Is there a voice present? And does it also scare the heck out of you? And then I can go.
Yeah, I need it to be just a little bit beyond my grasp. That
Perfect.
sense
Yeah.
of I'm always hopping a little bit to try to catch on to
Yeah.
it. Do you let a lot of things go? Are there a lot of ideas that you start and then think, nah, not that one?
There are a lot of ideas that I think, a goldfish in adolescence. No, or dream. I have dreams, and you wake up and you think that would be. I had it after Lincoln in the Bardo came out. I was so pleased that it had done well, but also felt that pressure, like, oh God, now what, And one night I had this beautiful dream of the next book, perfectly formed and everything. I thought, oh my God. And so I thought maybe I should get up and make some notes. I don't need to. I'll just write down the title. And so I had a Post-it and I wrote down, woke up in the morning, Custer and the Bardo. So that was one that didn't go. But I mean, I feel like there's a certain, like with this book, there was a certain idea that was a little conceptual for me, which is like the last hours of a climate change denier. That felt to me like, ooh, I don't think so. But then when I started thinking of who it might be, I got a little bit, oh yeah, that would be hard. It would be hard to represent a corporate type with language that made him come alive. That could be fun. And I'd been in the oil business, so I thought, oh yeah, I have a little bit of residual fondness for that occupation. I could maybe channel that. So then it got kind of exciting. And then when I thought, oh, and then it could be a ghost who comes, I just thought, oh, that would be fun. So fun is a big kind of code word for me.
Okay, so you just said, and I've been in the oil business. I know that, but I bet a lot of other people don't know that. So tell us about your experience in the oil business.
So I went to college at a place called the Colorado School of Mines, and got a high school teacher of mine named Joe Lindblom got me in there, literally with a phone call. He called admissions and said, this guy's kind of a screw up, but there's something to him. So I went.
That's what we all say about teachers.
Yeah, to this day. So I got a degree in geophysics, which at that time meant oil field exploration. So I went to Sumatra, Indonesia, and we were working in these rainforests that no one had ever set foot in before. We cut a line through there, and then you would bury some dynamite and blow it off, record the vibrations, and you could get a three-dimensional picture of what the subsurface is like. So that's what I did for a couple of years out of college. So it was very exploitative, of course, both of the environment and of the culture, but it was also a wild adventure for kind of a dummy of 22, So I had the feeling of being on the inside of this merry band of adventurers, and even then there were people who didn't love the industry, but I thought, well, they don't know how hard it is, So that part was kind of easy to channel. I never could have become an executive like he did, but I thought that early kind of tribal feeling was kind of a useful starting place.
Are you glad for that early education that you got? I mean, because it's just not the path that any other writer takes.
Yes, no, I'm so glad for it. And in a way I couldn't have gotten, except I was generally kind of clueless. Had never read any but Hemingway, and I had sort of an Indiana Jones fixation, So that let me blunder into a lot of areas that other writers couldn't get into because I was behind the screen. And I remember one time in the camp was out in the middle of nowhere. It was a 40-minute helicopter ride from the nearest small village. So we'd be there for 4 weeks, and the executives from the Indonesian National Oil Company came for this big meeting. And I wasn't allowed in, but I was in the next room. So all these mucky mucks are talking. And what we would do is we'd from these results, we developed this very detailed map of the surface and tell them exactly where to put the wells. And we were making millions of dollars. So during this talk, it became clear that there'd been a mistake, and the grid we were using was different from the one they were using. So we say drill at this spot, they put it on their map, and it would totally randomize the whole process. So for 10 years, we'd been making millions of dollars to give them the exact locations to drill, and they've been drilling some other place.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So when these guys realized this, there was this crazy moment of silence. I mean, just like a couple minutes, just And then somebody said, well, that's unfortunate. Perhaps, however, it shouldn't go far beyond this room. Agreed. It would serve no purpose. And just like that, it just got silent. So that was kind of a beautiful kind of Kafka moment, that I never could have had if I was, say, a journalist or something. They wouldn't have let me in. So I was always happy for that.
I just finished reading Margaret Atwood's memoir. She had the most fascinating childhood and relationship with the natural world and so many different adventures. And I was struck by, it's like you're filling up a suitcase when you're young with life experience. And then you go on and you're just drawing out of it forever.
So true.
And I often think, well, I wish I'd gone to Colorado School of the Mines and learned how to drill in Indonesia, because if you go and get an MFA early on, sometimes you wind up not having enough to draw out of.
Yes.
So tell me about going from that experience of life to getting an MFA.
Yeah, and parenthetically, let me say, I tell applicants sometimes that there is you can get two students who are equally talented, and the one who's had a little more outside time will thrive, and the one who's been only in school sometimes gets frustrated because they can feel that they have the chops, but there's nothing to subjugate the chops to. So
Yeah.
I got sick in Asia. I swam in a river I shouldn't have swum in, and with that monkeys were pooping into. So that's something you should avoid.
Kids, remember that. That's something you should avoid.
If
Okay.
that is that well-known mantra. If monkey, no swim. That's that kind of the. But so I got really sick, came home, and really I was that by this time I moved on to Kerouac, and I just kind of beaten it around for a few years, and worked as a roofer and did all this kind of stuff. And then I was at a really wild party in Amarillo, Texas, and it was making me nervous how crazy things were getting. So I went and picked up a People magazine, and they'd mentioned that there was this thing called an MFA program, and Syracuse had one. And Raymond Carver was there, and Jay McInerney was the hot young, So I thought, oh, I wonder. So somehow it was before the internet, but somehow I got them an application, and I got in there in Houston with Bartholomew.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know which one to do, and I kind of had a fondness for Texas. And then Tobias Wolff called me at home, and he'd really like you to come study. So I went, and it was really tough because I really hadn't read very much. And when I got there, I'd written one story that was kind of crazy and had some humor in it. And when I got there, I just clenched up, in the face of real writers. So I remember at one time I was at a party with Toby, and I said, I want you to know, I know you read that story of mine, but now I'm doing real writing. I'm getting serious. And Toby is such a wonderful, wise guy. He just did that thing where he said, well, good, but just don't lose the magic. And I was kind of like, well, of course, I won't do that. And then I did that exactly for about 4 years, just writing imitation Carver, imitation Toby, imitation Hemingway. So it was I tell my students that this 3 years you're spending here, don't expect linear results necessarily.
Yeah.
There's something you're investing sweat equity, and maybe you're just making bigger mistakes, but at some point it'll hopefully help. So for me, I didn't really start writing well again until about 2 years out of the program.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, yeah.
What was Carver like? I never met him.
I only met him. I didn't meet him as a teacher. I met him at a reception. He was there with his son, and but people who knew him. We later bought. What was his story? Oh, I met the doctor who attended him at his death and his illness, and he. I said, "What was Carver like?" And he just said, "The most wonderful man." And he so I think he had a lot of love in the community, in the neighborhood. But I think the story I've heard about him, and I think it's probably apocryphal, but I hope it isn't. So he'd do a seminar, kind of like, just not a workshop, but a literary talk.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd be reading a short story by somebody he admired because he just signed it. And he'd have to hang back, and everybody would sort of perform for him and trot out different theories. And towards the end of the class, everybody would turn to the master, And the story goes, he would go pick up the story and go look at it. Oh, wow. Great story. See you next week. And I'm sure that it isn't true, but I bet he did it a couple times where he just, kind of a Zen teaching, like, yeah.
McInerney had a story about he needed a grade to go, I don't know what it was, but he needed a grade, and he went to Carver and he was like, I need a grade, and Carver was like, yes, you're getting an A, and he opened up his book, and Jay said he looked, and he was like, every single person in the class had an A.
Well, it's a good technique. Yeah, because it's, at that level, it's kind of silly, but.
So did you enjoy teaching in an MFA program as much as you enjoyed attending an MFA program?
More.
Yeah.
The attending was hard because I just wasn't writing very well, and but I still teach there, and it's the best. I actually, I don't think I could do without it. I really miss it when I'm on leave. I'm kind of less productive, and the students. The biggest thing is that if you ever find yourself thinking, oh, the kids these days. Teaching like that would make you go, kids these days, they're so, and they're just like, when we were young, and you have that feeling of nothing matters more. And why can't I find my voice? And it's exactly the same, So my role is just to kind of increasingly, as I do it longer and longer, shut up, listen, and at some pivotal moment, often through a line edit, just sort of go, this is where you are. you're here. Or this, you're not here. You're here. And then sometimes in that process, you'll see that they are either intentionally or not intentionally exempting something from their lived experience that has all their gold in it. And I'm sure it's partly just they're afraid or there's an anxiety. And when that happens, where you identify something in the work where that real thing has leached through, all you have to do is just gently say, "Oh, that's good," and then suddenly So it's the best. I love it.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Vigil. This contains two really big parts of your life then. That early part of your life in which you're a miner, you're drilling for oil, but then also the part of your life that you spent as a Buddhist. And can you talk about that? Can you talk about that?
I think so.
It's a hard thing to talk about.
The main character is named Jill Dahl Blaine, and she's someone who died at 22 in 1976. So in my mind, she's one of the neighbor ladies in Chicago when I grew up. Kind of a sweetheart, and but also a little bit under the thumb of the patriarchy at the time, but responding with its kind of cheerfulness. And so I got to a critical point in the book where I had to describe how she left the earth, and just out of nowhere, she told me this story about what happened to her at that moment. And in her view, at that point, she became what she calls elevated. So she became very kind of loving-hearted and compassionate. And I think she's approximately a Buddhist, because she kind of thinks that given that time goes in only one direction, nobody's guilty for anything. All you can do is be merciful to people and forgive them. And so I kind of believe that. But I think she's actually a little bit off in her understanding of that. So she has a bit of what I've heard Buddhists call idiot compassion, where everything's okay, and somebody drives a spike through your head, and you say, "Oh, thank you for the coat rack," that kind of thing. So she kind of revealed herself to me that she had a blissful experience. She has all this love in her heart. But sort of in that excess of love, she actually doesn't do a very good job of what she's supposedly there to do. But that was a gradual reveal of, So that's right. So that's kind of the Buddhist part. But then the other thing is, there's a guy named the Frenchman who's kind of against everything she's for. He's very strict, and he's also a Buddhist. In the tradition, there's something called wrathful compassion, where if a teacher sees that you're messing up, they will do all kinds of crazy stuff to get you back on track. So that was definitely an export of some of those ideas.
How was it to go back to the Bardo? You've got two novels. You have a lot of short stories, but you have these two novels that come back to the same thing. And I cannot tell you how much I admire that as an author, because you write something and you learn from it, and you learn from people's response to it. And you start to think so profoundly, in a way, after the book is done. It's almost your sense of understanding of what you were doing deepens.
Yes.
And then often people think, well, I can't do that again.
Right.
But you go right back in there.
Yeah, in fact, the early drafts of this were in that same format as Lincoln and the Bardo. And that was an education, because it was... In Lincoln, that form came just because I needed it. This time it was because I wanted it. And after a while, the book said, "You know what? I'm kind of boring, and you can't do that again." So
I hate it when the book does that.
Boring. Yeah. No, not really. No, really. So then I just, okay, we're gonna have one narrator and broke it down. But the funny thing was that this Bardo was, in my mind anyway, a little bit different than the first one. That one was a little more rules-based, and there's an orderliness. And this one was mayhem, and things kept happening. Like, I don't think you're allowed. And the book said, "I'm the afterlife dummy. I can do whatever I want." So it was fun to kind of, and I think I might even try it a third time, because in truth, something changed in my view of the world between the first one and this one. And the only place I see it is in the kind of architecture. Like, the rules of the world of the Bardo are different. They're a little more unruly in this one, a little less rules-based. The people there, I think, are a little, in a funny way, more tormented. They don't necessarily, they know they're dead. They don't really want to keep being there, but they have no choice. And also, there's no real clear way for them to get out. So I'd almost like in the rule of threes, I like to take a third shot at it and see if that filled in a, kind of a space between the three. But,
So can you tell us what changed about your worldview between those two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was Trump and COVID, actually. I mean, I think when the Lincoln book was written, I mean, I'm a pretty optimistic person, but it seemed to me that the world was stable. My worldview could be adjusted. I could become a more spiritual person. But now I just feel like that we're on a pitching ship and we're drunk and wearing ice skates, So that is personally not that fun, but artistically it's kind of interesting because, and even as a Buddhist, the stability is pretty much an illusion. I mean, we have these periods of life where things are working the way they should, but then the curtain gets pulled back and you see, oh, death, and my own death, and even just small things where, suddenly 8 things are going wrong, and I see how addicted I am to the illusion that it's clear sailing for the rest of my life, and all I have to do is achieve something. And then when the rug gets pulled out, you think, oh, every minute is conditional. So I think that's in the books, and it also made for something. This book, in my reading of it, ends a little ambiguously. I mean, she's saying something, and we can feel she thinks we feel this, but on the undercurrent is maybe a little sorrow for her. That I don't think I've done before. Usually when my books land, you know where I am, and I know where I am, and the characters know. This one was a little cross-footed, which I kind of like. I felt it was maybe a sign of growth in that. So we'll see. Yeah.
I'm so excited to think that you're going to do something in this world a third time.
I might. I have an idea, which is always dangerous, But.
No. Having an idea is always the victory.
Yeah. I want to share something with our audience. I had missed Tom Lake when it came out, and I just this week read it, and I had the most powerful reading experience I've had in many, many years. I love that book so much, and I'm learning from it, because here's what I'm learning. You have, about any writer I've ever read, you have confidence in positive phenomenon. So you are the legendary, in my mind, describer of love. And that's the hardest thing. It's pretty easy to sort of scoff or be cynical, but when you turn your attention on those characters and so you say, I feel like you're saying to them, tell me how it really is, but tell me also what positive qualities do you have to deal with the world? And they tell you so beautifully, and then they tell me. So I'm kind of on cloud 9 from reading that book. Thank you for writing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just feel like, going back to what you were saying about the pitching ship and ice skates, I know that's true, but my life is so extraordinary. And I have love, I have this wonderful bookstore, I have friends, I have work that's so important to me, I have a wonderful marriage, I have good health. Like, if I can't speak up for love and kindness, who? And the other parts are so well represented.
Right.
And I'm not writing the only book that anybody's going to read. But I feel like the love and the kindness is a very important part of the puzzle that gets overlooked.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where I stake my flag.
I think, and the other thing is, when I found this, when the curtain does part and somebody passes away or something bad happens, I recognize that quality of love in your books. The feeling of like, okay, when it really comes down to it, this is a precious place to be. And we should be very glad. That quality is so often in literature, like in Death of Ivan Illich, that moment of that horrifying, But I think we've all had that feeling when we lose somebody and we're sort of speechless. That pure quality of love, that gratitude that comes through, that's a hard thing to catch. So anyway, thank you for that. Also makes me want to be an actor, which that's another topic. I won't do that.
Do you know what's so strange? If I could go back and do my life over again and my education, I would act.
Did you at all?
No.
No.
I would study acting, and it's not in any way that I would want to be an actress, but it's that I feel like everything I do, hi everybody, this thing, acting, developing characters in stories, it's central to life in a way that it just seemed frivolous when I was young.
Well, and also writing. I mean, and inhabiting. You know, like you have to
Yes.
pretend to be this manifestation of yourself, and you have to stay in character. I was in one thing. This was in the '70s in Chicago, so acting didn't have the kind of swagger that it does now. But I had a drama teacher who asked me to be in Parnassus Suite.
Oh, wow.
Yes, but I have only one line. It's a part where, you know, in one of the acts where there's a girl on her wedding day. She hides in the bathroom.
Yeah, right.
And so the scene is her two parents negotiating who messed her up. And I was the fiance who comes in a tuxedo and knocks on the door and says, "Mimsy, cool it." And I have my whole thing. But it was a rush. I love it so much. You know, it just,
Yeah. But the nice thing is we can't age out of our job.
no.
And I
that's
think
right.
that a lot. That is a very lovely gift.
Yeah, we should theoretically get wiser and wiser with every year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anything else I should know
No,
before we go?
I love the store so much, and I'm sorry we couldn't talk up there in front of people, but this has been a beautiful subject.
No, we get to talk in front of everybody. So thank you for understanding, because there's ice and there's no electricity. How could you fail to understand? And thank you for showing up and being here. And I'm so glad we got to talk.
Me too. Thank you for
All right.
having me.
Thank you. Bye.